They say love is quiet when it's real. For 10 years, my love for my mother was measured in sleepless nights, hospital corridors, and cold meals eaten alone beside her bed. When my sister, Leela, moved out, she said she couldn't handle the stress. I told her I understood, and I did, because someone had to stay, and that someone was me. I was 22 when Mom's illness worsened. While my friends built careers and families, I learned how to fold sheets with one hand and hold IV lines with the other. Mom used to smile at me from her bed and whisper, "You're my angel, Emma. I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words kept me going. They made every missed birthday, every canceled plan, every night I cried quietly into my pillow worth it. But sometimes, when I heard Mom on the phone with Leela, her laughter lighter, her tone softer, a strange ache would bloom in my chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was the realization that, even from afar, Leela still held a kind of magic I could never reach. One night, after a long hospital stay, I sat by Mom's bed as she slept. The heart monitor beeped softly, steady and fragile. I took her hand and whispered, "I'll take care of you, Mom, no matter what." I didn't know then how heavy that promise would become. And I had no idea that one day it would cost me everything she ever owned. It was a Sunday morning when Lila came back home. I remember the sound of her heels on the porch, confident, echoing, like she'd never left. Mom's face lit up the moment she saw her. "My baby girl," she said, reaching out with trembling hands. Lila leaned down, kissed her forehead, and smiled that soft, practiced smile of hers. I stood at the kitchen doorway, wiping my hands on a towel. She looked at me then, and her smile faded just a little. "Emma," she said, her tone polite but distant, "you look tired." I wanted to say, "You'd look tired too if you hadn't slept through a decade of caregiving," but I just nodded. I'd learned that silence was easier than confrontation. Over the next few weeks, Lila made herself at home again. She'd arrive with flowers, fresh clothes for Mom, new decorations for the living room. Mom would beam with pride, showing off every little thing Lila brought, like she was the hero who had come to rescue us both. One night, I overheard them talking. Mom's voice was soft, nostalgic. "You've always had such a good head for business, Lila," she said. "You remind me of your father." Lila laughed lightly. "Maybe someday I can help manage things for you, Mom, so Emma doesn't have to worry about the details." I froze in the hallway. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like she was gently planting seeds in soil I'd spent years tending. From then on, I noticed little things. Mom started asking Lila's opinion on money, on the house, even on my caregiving. And every time, her words were coated in sugar, sweet, careful, but sharp enough to cut. "Emma means well, but she doesn't really understand long-term planning," she'd say. Or, "You know how she gets emotional, Mom. She takes things too personally." Each word was a thread, gently pulling my name apart, until one day I realized my place in the house was shrinking. I wasn't the caregiver anymore. I was the shadow in the background of their laughter. And somehow, even though I had done everything right, I started feeling like the intruder. The house began to feel different after that. The same walls, the same smell of lavender lotion and lemon cleaner, but something in the air had changed. Mom started locking her medication drawer, said it was just to be safe. She kept her mail in her bedroom now, and Leela was the one who opened it with her in the mornings. Every time I offered to help, Mom would smile and say, "You do enough already, honey. Let your sister handle this." I told myself it didn't matter, that love was bigger than paperwork and mail. But late at night, when the house was still, I could hear them talking. their whispers slipping through the thin walls. "You really should think about your will, Mom," Leela would say softly. "You don't want Emma to be overwhelmed when you're gone." And Mom would sigh, her voice tired. "I've been meaning to take care of that." Each conversation felt like a thread being quietly pulled from the life I had woven around her. Day by day, Leela filled the spaces I used to occupy. Her laughter in the kitchen, her perfume in the hallway, her handwriting on notes taped to the fridge. One evening, I came home from work, a rare night shift I'd picked up to help pay the bills, and found them sitting together, papers spread across the coffee table. Mom looked up and smiled nervously. "Oh, Emma, we were just going over some things with Leela's friend. He's a lawyer." I forced a smile. "Everything okay?" Leela answered for her. "Just planning ahead, sis. You know, responsible stuff." Her tone was gentle, but her eyes said something else. Something final. I made tea for them, even though my hands were shaking. When I placed Mom's cup on the table, she took my hand and squeezed it softly. "You're such a good daughter. I just want to make sure you're both taken care of." It should have comforted me, but something deep inside me, something small and scared, knew that the words "taken care of" didn't include me anymore. That night, I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door of Mom's room. I heard her laugh softly at something Leela said, and I realized the distance between us wasn't in the hallway. It was in her heart. Mom's health started to decline fast after that. Hospitals blurred into weeks, and time became a long hallway of waiting rooms and whispered prayers. Lila visited more often now, always dressed perfectly, always smiling for the nurses. When I'd collapse into the chair beside Mom's bed, hair tangled, eyes heavy, she'd give me that same pitying look and say, "You should rest, Emma. You're exhausting yourself." But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had promised Mom that I'd never leave her side. One morning, I arrived at the hospital early, the world still quiet, soft lights spilling through the window blinds, and found an envelope on the bedside table. It was from a law firm. My heart sank instantly. I stared at it for what felt like forever before slipping it into my bag. Later that day, when Mom woke up, she smiled weakly. "Oh, honey, that's nothing important. Just some paperwork Lila helped me with." I nodded. I wanted to believe her, but the way her eyes avoided mine told me everything I didn't want to know. Weeks later, she passed away quietly in her sleep. I was holding her hand, the same way I had for years, whispering, "It's okay, Mom. You can rest now." Her last breath left her lips like a sigh of relief. The funeral came and went in haze. Lila handled most of it, of course. She was always better at making things look perfect on the outside. Then, a week later, we sat in a small office with polished wood and cold air conditioning. The lawyer opened a folder, cleared his throat, and began to read Mom's will. "To my daughter Lila, I leave the house, the savings account, and all remaining personal assets." My heart sank instantly. He continued, "To my daughter Emma, I leave my wedding ring and my love. Thank you for your care and devotion." The room went silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop. Lila looked at me with that same practiced sympathy, the kind that hides satisfaction. "She really appreciated you, Emma," she said softly. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask, how could she? But all I did was nod and whisper, "I know." That night, I went back to the house, her house now, and sat in the empty living room. The clock ticked in the dark, and the silence pressed down on me. 10 years of love, gone with a signature. And yet, somewhere inside that silence, I felt something else, something small, fragile, but real. Freedom. I moved out of the house a week after the will was read. Lila offered to let me stay until I figured things out. I told her I already had. I found a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing special, just a place where the air didn't smell like memories. At first, the silence was strange. No heart monitors, no medicine bottles, no footsteps in the hallway. Just me. I kept Mom's wedding ring on my nightstand. Sometimes I'd pick it up and trace the tiny scratches along the gold band. Each mark felt like a story, one she never told me, one I had to imagine on my own. For months, I couldn't stop replaying everything. Every smile, every whisper, every moment I chose her over myself. I wondered if she really knew what she'd done, or if Lila had just painted me into the background until Mom couldn't see me anymore. But one evening, as I stood by the window, watching the sunset melt into gold, I realized something. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need the house or the money or her approval, because what I gave her, the years, the love, the patience, those were mine too, and no one could take that from me. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before Mom got sick. At first, the brush felt heavy in my hand, like it was testing me, but soon the colors began to move easily, like they'd been waiting for me to come back. One day, Lila called. She said the house felt too big, too quiet. She asked if I wanted to visit. I told her, maybe someday, but we both knew I wouldn't. When I hung up, I looked around my tiny apartment, the peeling paint, the half-finished canvas, and the soft hum of freedom, and I smiled. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't need to take care of anyone to feel whole. Sometimes healing isn't about getting back what you lost. It's about realizing what you still have. And what I had was peace.